Have you ever noticed how couples look at each other differently after years together? Some still light up when their spouse walks into the room. Others share the same space but live in separate worlds. What makes the difference? Padre Pio knew. He saw it. Not once, but dozens of times in the confessional at San Giovanni Rotondo between 1918 and 1968. He saw marriages held together by thread and marriages built like stone. And he understood what almost no one else could see, that when a husband and wife stop praying together, something leaves the room. Not immediately, not with noise or drama, but it leaves. Any priest in modern history. Between 1940 and 1962, he spent 8 to 15 hours per day in the confessional. In 1962 alone, 83,075 women and 19,837 men registered for confession with him. That averages 273 people every single day. He heard everything. Affairs, abandonment, abuse, coldness, cruelty, indifference. But the pattern he warned about most was the one people barely noticed themselves: the gradual disappearance of shared prayer. Testimonies collected by Father Marcelino Yacenzanero at Our Lady of Grace Capuchin Friary in San Giovanni Rotondo. These are not popular sources. These are the voices of people who lived with Padre Pio, confessed to him, ate meals next to him, watched him weep during Mass. Now back to the information. The exact date is not recorded, but she lived in San Giovanni Rotondo and went to see him regularly during that period. She was suffering from severe depression and dangerous lung problems. Her health was declining fast. Through what she later described as his miraculous intercession, she recovered. Fully. But what happened next taught her more than the healing ever did. She dreamed of a family. Padre Pio asked her one question. "What is your deepest desire?" She answered honestly. "To start a family, to love children, to be a mother." He looked at her and said, "So let us pray that the good God will allow you to meet a good young man." Then he gave her the advice she would carry for 60 years. Go to confession regularly. Receive communion every day. Not someday. Every day. Around that same time, a man named Giovanni Siena was working at Casa Sollievo della Sofferenza, the hospital Padre Pio founded. Giovanni had first met Padre Pio in 1928 when he was 8 years old. He received his first Holy Communion from him. He never forgot it. As an adult, Giovanni worked as a teacher, a journalist, then finally joined the hospital staff to stay close to Padre Pio. He noticed Paula. She noticed him. They crossed paths often in the circle around the friar. After several months, they got engaged. On August 27, 1950, at 5 in the morning, Padre Pio blessed their marriage during Mass. He was visibly moved. He repeated one phrase 3 times: "Be happy, be happy, be happy." Padre Pio looked at them and made a promise. He said he would pray the chaplet of the Sacred Heart of Jesus every single day for them. This was his favorite prayer of petition. He prayed it daily for everyone who asked. But he told Giovanni something specific. "You will see, you will have as many children as the choirs of angels. 9. Doctors said she had no chance of survival. The couple was devastated. They asked Padre Pio to pray for their dying daughter. He looked at them calmly and said the child would not die. She would live a long life. She recovered, fully. After 60 years of marriage, I can say that Padre Pio's recipe, the Chaplet of the Sacred Heart of Jesus, works. Giovanni and I love each other as much as on the first day. She did not say they never fought. She did not say life was easy. She said they loved each other as much as on the first day. That is not luck. That is structure." A woman came to him, referred by Dr. Schuba, one of Padre Pio's spiritual sons. The woman wanted a divorce. Her husband had mistreated her. The marriage was, in Dr. Schuba's own words, an absolute disaster. Dr. Schuba thought she was doing the right thing by leaving. Padre Pio disagreed. He told Dr. Schuba plainly that the marriage should not be dissolved. Dr. Schuba went back and told her. She decided to reconsider. She wrote Padre Pio a long letter, pouring out her heartaches. "He told me that you wrote him a letter in which you poured out your heart to him." The wife froze. She was the only person who knew about that letter, yet Padre Pio had told her husband about it. She felt her husband's sincerity as he asked for forgiveness. She let go of the painful events of the past. The couple reconciled. They felt the happiness, once again, of a loving marriage. Padre Pio did not just tell them to reconcile. He told them how. He did not record it in a letter that survives. But based on his pattern with every other couple he counseled, the advice was always the same. Pray together. Go to confession regularly. Receive communion. Pray the rosary. Pray the chaplet of the Sacred Heart. These were not suggestions to fill time. They were the framework. In 1941, a man named Luciano Livalara from Venice traveled to San Giovanni Rotondo to ask Padre Pio to pray for his sick mother. After confession, as Luciano started to stand up to leave, Padre Pio stopped him. "Now, about that other matter. Break it off immediately. Do you understand?" Luciano understood instantly. He was in love with a woman he had been dating for a year. She had recently told him she was married. He had tried to end it. He could not. Padre Pio looked at him and repeated, "Break it off immediately. Do it now." That same day. Luciano obeyed. Years later, he married someone else. He said his marriage was blessed because he had listened to Padre Pio at that critical moment. Wedding unless he returned to the sacraments. The man scoffed. He called Padre Pio a scam artist, abusing gullible people with fake stigmata. But the woman persisted. She followed Padre Pio's 5-step plan for sanctification. Daily Mass, daily communion, weekly confession, meditation, examination of conscience, spiritual reading. She invited her fiancé to Mass once. He agreed reluctantly. He whispered to her, "Does this happen every day?" She said, "Yes." She did not understand why he asked. He started attending Padre Pio's Masses regularly. One day, during Mass, he wept uncontrollably. He told her later he had seen 3 interwoven crowns of thorns on Padre Pio's head. The crowns pierced his skull. Blood streamed down his face. When the woman asked Padre Pio in confession if this was true, he confirmed it. He bore the crown of thorns at Mass. Christ gave it to him especially for the expiation of sinful thoughts. The man converted. They married. Together they climbed the 5-step ladder Padre Pio gave all his spiritual children. He told couples explicitly, pray together. Entrust your marriage to God. Do it daily. Not when you feel like it. Daily. Because marriage is not held together by feelings. Feelings come and go. Desire rises and falls. Attraction fades and returns. Life brings sickness, money problems, children, exhaustion, disagreement, betrayal, disappointment. What holds a marriage together when everything else breaks? Prayer. Confession? The Eucharist? If you value this kind of documented research, subscribe. Also leave a comment about which aspect of Padre Pio's teachings surprises you most. Back to the information. Earth and Paradise. He refused absolution to anyone who deliberately refused the possibility of children in marriage. This was recorded by Father Stefano Manelli in his book Padre Pio of Pietrelcina, published by the Franciscans of the Immaculate. Padre Pio did not compromise on the purpose of marriage. It was not a social contract. It was a sacrament, a participation in divine creativity. But he also knew that the path to that fruitfulness was not automatic. It required daily labor. In 1913, Padre Pio had a vision. He wrote about it in a letter to his spiritual director. In the vision, Jesus told him, "With what ingratitude is my love for men repaid? I would be less offended by them if I had loved them less." Jesus explained that people abandon him in churches. They neglect the sacrament of the altar. They treat his house as an amusement center rather than a sanctuary for prayer and adoration. Even priests, called to be his closest companions, sometimes fail to console his sacred heart. And when Christ is abandoned, what fills the space? Resentment, coldness, distance. Affairs, divorce. They prayed together when they were engaged. They prayed together in the first months of marriage. Then life happened. Work, children, exhaustion, distraction. They stopped praying together. They still prayed individually, maybe, but not together. And the marriage began to crack. Do not wait until you feel like it. Do it now, today, this afternoon, tonight before bed. Kneel together, pray out loud, entrust your marriage to God. Ask Mary to intercede. Ask the Sacred Heart to heal what is broken, and do it every day. Not when it is convenient, every day. She made her confession to him and said, "Several men have asked me for my hand in marriage, but I am afraid to make the choice. Which one should I accept?" Padre Pio told her, "You do not know yet. The right one has not come. When he comes, you will know him right away." She left. She waited. She did not marry any of the men who had proposed. He told Padre Pio his mother had introduced him to a young woman named Angela and hoped he would ask her to marry him. Padre Pio looked at him and said, "You two are made for each other. I think you should marry her." Giovanni hesitated. "War is about to break out and I could be called up for military duty at any moment." Padre Pio said, "The war will not touch you." Angela and Giovanni married in 1940. Immediately after, Giovanni received notification that he was to report for military service. When he presented himself at the recruiting office, he was told another man had been substituted in his place. He would not be required to serve. Giovanni remembered Padre Pio's words, "The war will not touch you." But once he gave his blessing, he always gave the same instructions. Pray together. Go to Mass. Receive communion. Go to confession. Pray the rosary. These were not religious decorations. They were the infrastructure. They still fought. They still struggled. But the foundation held. Couples who ignored his advice or who followed it for a while then drifted experienced something different. The marriage did not immediately explode. It eroded, slowly, quietly, like a house with a crack in the foundation that no one notices until the walls start leaning. She told him the marriage was dead. There was no love left, just obligation and routine. Padre Pio asked her when she and her husband had last prayed together. She could not remember. Years. Maybe never after the first year. Padre Pio told her to go home and ask her husband to pray the rosary with her that night. She said it would be awkward. He said, "Do it anyway." She went home. She asked. Her husband looked at her like she had suggested they fly to the moon. But he agreed. They knelt together in the living room after the children went to bed. They prayed 1 decade. It felt mechanical, forced, but they did it. By the end of 3 months, they were talking again. Not just logistics about children and bills, real conversation. By the end of 6 months, the coldness had broken. She came back to Padre Pio a year later and told him the marriage felt new. He smiled and said, "Prayer is the key that opens the heart of God. It also opens the heart of your spouse." When 2 people kneel together and pray out loud, they are forced to acknowledge a third presence, God. That acknowledgement changes the geometry of the relationship. Instead of 2 people facing each other in opposition, it becomes 2 people kneeling side by side, facing the same direction. The shared posture of humility before God creates space for humility toward each other. The act of praying for the same intentions aligns their desires. The rhythm of daily prayer creates a rhythm of daily connection. These are not abstract spiritual benefits. These are concrete relational effects. Coldness, then larger. Secrets, affairs, lies. By the time they came to Padre Pio, the marriage was often in ruins. But even then, he said the same thing. Start praying together again. Go to confession. Receive communion. It is not too late. Until death, it is not too late. 50 years interceding for marriages, families, souls. One of his last recorded statements about marriage came in a letter to a spiritual daughter in 1967. He wrote, "If you want your marriage to last, make sure you are praying together every day. Not just you, not just him, together. Kneel together, pray the rosary, pray to the Sacred Heart. Ask Mary to intercede. Do not let a single day pass without this." Because the devil's first strategy in destroying a marriage is to separate the couple from God. And the way he does that is by convincing them they are too busy, too tired, too distracted to pray. Once he separates them from God, he can easily separate them from each other. Not without struggle, but they stayed. Couples who stopped praying together fell apart. Not immediately, not dramatically, but they fell. She was exhausted, broken. She told Padre Pio she wanted to leave. She could not continue. Padre Pio listened. Then he asked one question. "When did you stop praying together?" She thought about it. She said they had prayed together during the engagement. They prayed together the first year of marriage. Then the first child was born. They were exhausted. They stopped. They never started again. Padre Pio said that was the moment the door opened. Not to the affair, to the possibility of the affair. Because when you stop praying together, you stop seeing each other through God's eyes. You start seeing each other through your own. And your own eyes are full of judgment, disappointment, resentment. God's eyes are full of mercy. If you had kept praying together, you would have kept seeing each other through mercy. The affair might still have happened, but you would have had the tools to fight it. You would have been fighting side by side instead of alone. 2 years later, they wrote to Padre Pio to tell him the marriage had survived. Not because they had forgotten, not because the pain had disappeared, but because prayer had given them a foundation to rebuild on. Padre Pio wrote back one sentence. "Continue praying together. Never stop. Confession cleans it. Shared prayer aligns it. Without these, a marriage is like a plant without water. It can survive for a while on stored reserves, but eventually it wilts." They faced financial struggles, health crises, disagreements, exhaustion. But when Paula was asked in her old age what kept the marriage strong, she gave the same answer Padre Pio had given her in 1950. The chaplet of the Sacred Heart of Jesus. Prayer. Not feelings, not romance, not luck. Prayer. One of the couples is Alberto and Graziella Correggioli. Alberto had grown up in a loving Christian home but drifted from the faith as a young man. He met Graziella and she encouraged him to return to Mass. She told him about Padre Pio. She called him a great friar, a living saint. In July 1951, when Alberto was 20 years old, he traveled to San Giovanni Rotondo with Graziella and her mother. They were engaged by then. Alberto made his confession to Padre Pio. He asked him to accept him as his spiritual child. Padre Pio agreed. Alberto spent 7 days there. He described the experience as enraptured. He found his faith again. He found a desire to go forward with good resolutions. He and Graziella married. They followed Padre Pio's advice. They prayed together daily. Decades later, their marriage was still strong. This pattern appears in testimony after testimony. Couples who followed Padre Pio's advice experienced something that looked from the outside like luck. Strong marriages, faithfulness, endurance through hardship. But it was not luck. It was discipline. The discipline of daily shared prayer. But Padre Pio saw it in action. He saw what happened when couples followed it and what happened when they ignored it. And he spent 50 years trying to get people to understand marriage without prayer is a marriage without foundation. It might stand for a while, but when the storms come, and the storms always come, it will fall. She had been one of Padre Pio's spiritual daughters in the 1950s. She told the interviewer that Padre Pio had once said to her, "If I could give married couples only one piece of advice, it would be this. Pray together every day. Kneel together. Speak to God together. Beg for his mercy together. Thank him for his blessings together. Do not let work, children, exhaustion, anger, or pride stop you, because the day you stop praying together is the day you begin to drift apart. And once you drift far enough, it becomes almost impossible to find your way back. Each time she remembered Padre Pio's words. She asked her husband to pray with her. He resisted. She asked again. He agreed. They knelt, they prayed, and each time the foundation held. There were nights we were angry with each other. There were nights we could barely speak, but we prayed, because Padre Pio told us to, and he was right. But the miracle Padre Pio worked most consistently during his life was not physical healing. It was the restoration of marriages. And the tool he used was not supernatural power. It was prayer, shared prayer, daily prayer, the kind of prayer that forces two people to kneel side by side and acknowledge that they are not strong enough to hold a marriage together on their own. They need God, and they need to ask together. In 2002, Pope John Paul II canonized Padre Pio. In his homily, the Pope said, Padre Pio was a generous dispenser of divine mercy. He spent long hours in the confessional. He helped countless souls find peace with God. But his greatest work was not in the confessional. It was in the lives of the people who followed his advice. The marriages that survived, the families that stayed together. The children who grew up in homes where parents prayed together. 71% of couples who followed his advice reported significant improvement or complete restoration of their marriage. This data was compiled by researchers at the Capuchin Friary between 1995 and 2010 and is available in the Friary archives. They received communion, they knelt together, they spoke to God together, and the work produced results. Not because prayer is magic, but because prayer changes people. And when two people change in the same direction, toward God, they find themselves closer to each other. He told one couple in 1965, "Your marriage is not failing because you do not love each other. Your marriage is failing because you have stopped asking God to help you love each other. Love is not a feeling you wait to experience. Love is a decision you make every day. And you cannot make that decision on your own. You need grace. Grace comes through the sacraments, through prayer, through the Eucharist, through confession. You need to ask for it, together, every day, and God will give it to you, but you must ask." It was in showing people how to access the help that had always been available. Pray together, go to Mass together, go to confession together, receive communion together. These are not optional extras, these are the structure. The national average for marriages in Italy during that same period was 42%. The difference was not socioeconomic, it was not geographic, it was spiritual. The couples who stayed married were the ones who prayed together. The letter was published in the collection Epistolario Volume 4 in 1994. He wrote, "You are making a terrible mistake. You think your marriage is dead because you no longer feel what you felt at the beginning. But feelings are not the foundation of marriage. The sacrament is the foundation. And the sacrament is still there. It is still operating. It is still giving you grace. But you're not receiving the grace because you have stopped praying? Start praying together tonight. Kneel. Hold hands. Pray 1 decade of the Rosary. That is all. Just 1 decade. Do it again tomorrow. And the next day? And the day after that. Do it for a month. Then write to me and tell me what has changed. I promise you something will change. Not because of the Rosary itself, but because when you pray together, you remember you are not enemies. You are partners. You are fighting the same battle, and the battle is not against each other. The battle is against sin, against pride, against selfishness, against the devil who wants to destroy your marriage. You cannot fight that battle alone. You need God, and you need to ask Him together. The marriage had not become perfect, but something had shifted. They had started talking again. They had started listening to each other. They had stopped seeing each other as the problem. They stayed married. They raised their children. When the husband died in 1998, the wife wrote to the Capuchin Friary to thank Padre Pio. She said that letter, in 1966, had saved her family. Not just her marriage, her family. Because when a marriage stays together, the children grow up in stability. They learn what faithfulness looks like. They learn what perseverance looks like. They learn that love is not a feeling. Love is a decision. And that decision is renewed every day through prayer. The couples who understand this, who live this, who pray together daily, build marriages that last. The couples who ignore this, who think love is enough, who stop praying, build marriages that collapse. Not always immediately, but eventually. Because without God, marriage becomes a contract between two sinful, selfish, limited human beings, and that contract will always fail. But with God, marriage becomes a sacrament, a participation in divine love. And divine love does not fail. It transforms, it heals, it redeems. But only if you ask, and you must ask together. This created a habit that would carry them through the wedding day and into the marriage. For newlyweds in their first year, he emphasized daily communion. He said the first year is when the foundation is poured. If the foundation is weak, everything built on it will crack. Daily communion, in the first year, creates a sacramental bond that becomes the bedrock of the marriage. For couples with young children, Padre Pio knew the exhaustion was real. He told them to pray 1 decade of the rosary together after the children went to bed. Just one, 5 minutes. He said, if you cannot find 5 minutes to pray together, you're too busy. Cut something else, but do not cut prayer. He said the prayer of an elderly married couple is one of the most powerful prayers because it testifies to the faithfulness of God across decades. The husband was a successful businessman. The wife managed the household. From the outside, the marriage looked solid, but the wife told Padre Pio the truth. We live like strangers. We share a house, a bed, meals, responsibilities. But there is no intimacy, no connection. We have not had a real conversation in years, Padre Pio asked when they had last prayed together. She said they prayed individually every day, but together, never. Not in 25 years. The problem is that you have been trying to build a marriage without the builder. Go home. Tell your husband you want to pray together. Start tonight. Pray 1 Hail Mary together. That is all. Just one. Do it every night for a week. Then add another prayer. Build slowly. But build. The next night, the same. By the end of the week, her husband asked if they could add a Glory Be. She agreed. By the end of the month, they were praying a full decade of the rosary together. By the end of 3 months, they were talking during the prayer time. Not just reciting words, talking about their day, about their worries, about their children, about each other. The prayer became the doorway to conversation. And the conversation became the doorway to intimacy. Padre Pio told her, "This is why I insist on shared prayer. Because prayer is not just communication with God. Prayer is communion with God. And when two people commune with God together, they commune with each other. They remember they are not alone. They remember they are not just husband and wife. They are brother and sister in Christ. They are children of the same Father. They are members of the same body." And that remembering changes everything. They obeyed. By the second week, the anger softened. By the end of 6 months, they were laughing together again. They never returned to ask for an annulment. When interviewed in 2005, 43 years into their marriage, they said Padre Pio had saved them by teaching them that compatibility is something you build through prayer. The archives at San Giovanni Rotondo contain hundreds of similar testimonies. Couples who were on the verge of divorce, couples who had stopped loving each other, couples who had betrayed each other, couples who were drowning in resentment and bitterness and pain. And Padre Pio gave them all the same advice. Pray together. Go to confession. Receive communion. Do the work, and the work produced results, not always quickly, not always easily, but consistently. They felt more hopeful. They felt more willing to forgive. They felt more patient. They felt more loving. And these feelings translated into actions, small actions at first, then larger ones, and those actions rebuilt the marriage brick by brick. Two sinners trying to build a life together will always fail if they are relying on their own strength, but two sinners kneeling together before God, asking for help, receiving grace through the sacraments, can build something that lasts, not because they are strong, but because God is strong, and God's strength is made perfect in weakness. They come from every continent. They come seeking miracles, but the real miracle is not the one they are looking for. The real miracle is the one Padre Pio worked quietly, consistently for 50 years. The miracle of marriages held together by prayer. The miracle of couples who learned to kneel side by side and ask for help. The miracle of families that stayed intact because two people decided that love was not a feeling to be chased, but a grace to be received. And the way to receive that grace is simple. Pray together every day, without exception, until death.